Welcome to this meeting of Assembly Committee on Education for the 2023 legislative session. Secretary, will you please call roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblyman De Silva. Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblyman Koenig.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Mosca.
Here.
Assemblywoman Taylor.
Present.
Assemblywoman Thomas.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you. I am here, and please mark Assemblyman De Silva here when he arrives. So welcome, sorry. It's that time of year. Yeah, when he gets here, you mark him that he's here. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, welcome to everyone here in the audience, to a couple of you in Las Vegas, and anybody watching our YouTube channel. Just a reminder, please silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table over by the door. Provide a business card to the committee secretary. When testifying, turn on the microphone, clearly state and spell your name, and here comes Assemblyman De Silva. Welcome. We started early. That was any affiliation you may have, and then turn the microphone off when you're done speaking. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions. We may not always agree with each other, but that doesn't mean we can't be nice to each other. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please don't take this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Finally, we will be limiting our testimony to 20-minute windows, 20 minutes of support, followed by 20 minutes opposition, and 20 minutes in neutral. With that, let's get started. Today, we're going to hear three bills. We'll begin with Senate Bill 148, then we'll hear SB 340, and then SB 442. I will now open the hearing on SB 148. This measure revises provisions relating to local school precincts. To present this measure, we have Senator Lang, who is joined by Fred Horvath, who is the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamster Local 14, and Jan Giles, yes, is, there you are, okay, President of the Education Sport Employees Association. Please go ahead when you're ready, and welcome to our committee.
Thank you so much, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, and members of the Committee on Education. My name is Roberta Lang, and I am the State Senator for District 7 in Clark County. I'm happy to present Senate Bill 148. This bill makes changes to site-based school management and will establish staffing ratios for local school precincts when hiring school support staff. I am joined, as was mentioned earlier, by Fred Horvath and Jan Giles, who's in Las Vegas and president of the Education Support Association. This bill requires local precincts to meet certain ratios of personnel when hiring staff for precinct who provide custodial, maintenance, and security services. For custodial employees, the local precinct must employ at a ratio of school custodial employees to square footage as required by a Level 2 cleaning standard as stated within the Common Education Data Standards. With regard to campus security, the local precinct must employ a ratio of not less 3 campus staff to every 1,000 pupils enrolled in that precinct. I would like to place emphasis on this section here. We've had many discussions about staff ratios, and when talking about doctors, nurses, teachers, and certain other school-based personnel, including school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, but we haven't addressed the need to ensure these additional school support staff, custodial employees, and campus security monitors receive the attention they deserve. Enforcing these ratios will make sure our local school precincts have the necessary number of support staff to ensure that students are provided clean and safe environment for learning. In addition, which requires the principal of local school precinct to select employees for that precinct in accordance with the applicable collective bargaining agreement. It also requires the superintendent making any decision regarding an assignment or reassignment of certain staff to first consult with the principal of the local school precinct and the school associate superintendent. Lastly, this bill authorized the local school precinct to use year-end balance to employ additional personnel to meet the staffing ratios mentioned previously. And now I'd like to turn it over to Fred Horvath.
Good afternoon, members of the Assembly Committee on Education. I appreciate the opportunity to address you. My name is Fred Horvath, last name spelled H-O-R, V as in Victor, A-T-H. My address is 8951 West Sahara Boulevard. Actually, it's Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89117. I'm the principal officer of Teamsters Local 14, and in partnership with the Education Support Employee Association and their president, Jan Giles, we represent 13,000 education employee support professionals at the Clark County School District. We truly appreciate Senator Lang's sponsorship of SB 148 and the Senate's support for this legislation. I'd like to be very clear from the outset of my testimony. The core foundation of this bill is student and employee safety. It is not more complicated than that. In an incredibly tragic coincidence, I'm sure as you know, a campus security monitor at the Ed Von Toblen Middle School was shot on campus yesterday. Miraculously, the education support professional is expected to survive that attack. Section 5B of this proposed legislation deals with that classification of campus security monitors and full-time custodial classifications as defined in NRS 388. We have dozens of locations where an individual custodian is working alone in a school past 11 o'clock p.m. And there are many people besides staff and non-staff who have access to those schools, and they are alone. They have to get to their vehicle after hours, and the Clark County Police Department is not staffed or charged with providing personal safety for the protection of these folks after hours. Normal staffing levels and this bill would provide at least 2 custodians classified to do this work to be at the school at all times. Section 2 of this bill is an effort to mitigate the potential disaster that could occur when external vendors whose employees have not been subject to the rigorous background check that all employees of the Clark County School District must go through and able to access a campus. To reiterate what I said, this effort is to secure and enhance the daily safety of all students and employees in the district. The ESEA and Teamsters Local 14 do not come to you with this problem without being active participants with the district in pursuit of root cause solutions. There are 2 structural impediments that have created this challenge. First, in the reorganization defined in NRS 288 that came out of the 388, came out of the 2019 legislature, the delegation of staffing decisions was sent to the principals and the school organizational teams. This leads to competing interests for administrators, teachers' aides, campus security monitors, custodial resources, among others. Tough decisions are made on how many people are going to be in those classifications by these groups. Unfortunately, the actual staffing levels for both custodial and campus security monitors have often suffered. Most troublesome for those of us representing support professionals is the magnitude of the unspent budget carry forwards that are now exceeding approximately $250 million in the schools. Yet we can't fill these positions. A significant portion of these unspent dollars emanate from salary savings due to vacant positions not being filled. The second challenge that is being addressed in a collaborative manner with the district leadership is the compensation paid to these classifications. Similar to what was a very successful effort with the bus driver vacancy crisis, we conducted proper and proactive negotiations with the school district and were able to modify the starting and top-end classification of bus drivers and eliminated over 300 ongoing chronic vacancies in the bus driver classification. We're engaged in exactly the same process and have just completed that when it comes to the campus security monitors, literally to be approved this week, I believe, by the trustees. And their compensation now will be at a place where we will be able to effectively recruit and retain campus security monitors. We are at the advanced stages of those kind of conversations on the custodial classifications. Again, incredibly difficult to compete when the starting salary is below what most fast food organizations are paying. Incredibly difficult to retain staff when their top salary is below poverty level and they are eligible for Medicaid. We appreciate Dr. Jara's effort and his executive team in addressing this up front and working to change and modify, which is defined as increase, the compensation for these classifications. You'll soon hear testimony from the administrators relative to the delays in filling positions and having maintenance requests just sitting there for months, possibly in excess of a year. We support and appreciate their frustration and offer an open hand to work collectively with the district to remedy and accelerate the filling of vacancies in these classifications. There are hundreds of vacancies in skilled trade positions, once again, for one reason. Skilled trades positions are paid well below market. It's incredibly important and possible to recruit, equally challenging to retain when they can leave and go into the private sector or other local governments for a significant increase. Finally, you'll hear from the administrators that this entire bill must fail because of language in Section 4 of this bill, and that is about the principal's ability to select those who reside on their campus. There's no doubt we have an ongoing dispute about the interpretation of and the priorities of collective bargaining agreements between support staff, between teachers, and what 388 provides for the autonomy of principal selection. I will tell you that 99% of all vacancies filled under the current collective bargaining are filled without objection by the administrators. The only issue that remains in dispute in this process are those who are involuntarily reduced, are forced to leave their school because the SOT has eliminated their position and decided those resources needed to be used elsewhere. We have a difference in opinion. We have clear contract language that provides rights for them. There's a conflict about whether 388 overrides that, but it'd be really, really disappointing to me that we would lose this opportunity and potentially create a catastrophic result for this bill to fail over 1% of the staffing solutions. I appreciate your ability to address you today.
Thank you. And if we could have Jan Giles from ESCA.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jan, Jan Giles, G as in George, ILES, and I am the president of the Education Support Employees Association, otherwise known as ESEA. We represent the campus security monitors that work in CCSD schools. This language will add much needed safety to our schools to protect students and staff. Due to the current climate, safety should be a priority. We know that elementary schools are not immune to violence, yet currently very few have a campus security monitor. Only high schools and middle schools currently budget for CSMs. Elementary schools do not, yet we know they are experiencing the same safety issues. This will allow all schools to have at least a minimum of one CSM per school. This language will also add additional employees to provide a clean learning environment for our students. Currently, the square footage these employees are required to clean is unattainable. This will help prevent employee burnout and allow for coverage during employee absences. We know that no one can prevent a stray bullet from being in the area of a school, but we can definitely be prepared for an attack on students in a school setting. This bill will increase safety as a whole on school campuses. There are issues with weapons, drugs, and fights that having additional campus security monitors can alleviate. Reducing these situations will improve the students' learning environment. Students can focus on learning if they don't feel safe in schools. Thank you.
And with that, Madam Chair, we'd be open for questions.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have questions on the bill? This is unprecedented. Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you. And this might be a question for our legal counselor as well. I'm just wondering how this works with the reorg legislation that we passed a couple sessions ago.
Yes, there he is. Nice to see you, Mr. Killian. Did you hear that question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So this legislation is actually amending provisions that were adopted as part of the reorg legislation. So this is effectively just further clarifying what the role of the principal of the large school precinct is versus what the role of the large school district is. Generally, the principal of the local school precinct is required to select the teachers, administrators, and other staff for the precinct. This bill would require, when making those selections, that the principal attempt to select the proper number of custodial and security staff if they're available. If not, it enables the principal of the local school precinct to use money from the carry forward dollars for the local school precinct to employ those people. And then also it generally requires, because the collective bargaining agreement is negotiated with the school district as opposed to the local school precinct, it requires the principal to make their selections for the local school precinct in accordance with that collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. So, in other words, based on, and I'm unpacking this myself. So, in other words, because of the bill, the reorg bill, that section 4 has got to be in there? Is that correct? Of the section 4, the principal with the collective bargaining agreement, that language, is that necessary because of that bill?
Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Necessary isn't necessarily a word I would use. It does clarify the intent of the legislature in what the breakdown of responsibilities is supposed to be between the principals of the local school precincts and the district itself. Since the collective bargaining agreement is an agreement between the unions and the district, it doesn't necessarily apply to the principals of the local school precincts. But this change in subsection 4 is clarifying that it is the intent of the legislature that the principals of the local school precinct should also be acting in accordance with that collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you for that clarification. You have a follow-up? Sure.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Killian, for that clarification. And so then as I read on page 4, sub 5 of the bill, it says to the extent that such personnel are available, but then, so this would be to the extent that the personnel are available, but then in the next page, on page 5 of the bill, that kind of clarifies that it's also to the extent that the funds are available. Is that correct? So that the carryover funds can then be used to support that if those funds are not available within the school. Okay, I think I'm getting that correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Yeah, so there are two different steps here. The first is that it's the responsibility of the large school district to employ a pool of personnel from which the principals of the local school precincts select. And it is possible that in that pool of personnel employed by the large school district, there may not be enough custodial and security staff for the principals of all the local school precincts to be able to select enough people to be able to satisfy the requirements in the new subsection 5 of this bill. And if that is the case, where there are not enough personnel of the large school district available for the principal of the local school precinct to select, then under section 3 of the bill, the principal of the local school precinct can use their carry forward dollars in their own budget to directly employ those people rather than to select from the employees of the large school district.
I'm going to go to Vice Chair Taylor, and then we can come back.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, and thank you for being here from the Teamsters. I'm looking in subsection 5, I believe it is, 5B, in Nellis anyway. It's on page 4, going down the line 21. It talks about the ratio for security services of not less than 3 staff members for each 1,000 pupils. Is there a ratio now? What do you expect that there is now, which made you land on this number?
Who's going to answer that? Here, everybody's looking at everybody. It's like one of those,
Dan, that would be you.
Sorry, thank you. Jan Giles, for the record. Currently, there is no ratio. It is up to the administrator based on whatever budget is provided them from the per pupil funding. So right now, there is no ratio.
And I assume, Vice Chair, you were maybe asking for a guesstimate? We
Yes.
might not have a ratio in statute, but do you have a guesstimate currently?
I don't have a guesstimate. I can say that elementary schools, like I said in my statement, there is a handful that have chosen to hire a campus security monitor, but for the majority of the middle elementary schools, there is no campus security monitor. Middle schools have roughly 2 to 3. High schools have roughly 5, roughly. Sometimes if they choose to add more, they choose to based on their budget. I do know of a few high schools that have 8 or 9, but roughly for a majority of them, they have 4 or 5.
If I may follow up, Madam Chair? Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Giles, for that. I'm going to follow up just a little bit. So we know there are a few of them in elementary schools in the district, as it appears, and then you have 2 or 3 middle schools, high schools, what have you. How many do you expect that will need to be added? Then maybe that might help, because I know you don't necessarily have a ratio, but how many? That is an idea.
Well, I think it would put at least one in every elementary school because it's all based on enrollment, right? And that changes from year to year. So depending on the enrollment of an elementary school, if it's less than 1,000, they would at least have one. Middle schools would roughly stay the same, 2 to 3. High schools would probably increase based on their enrollment. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of guessing. I don't have that information, but I can get it for you if you'd like after this. I can do a little more research with our numbers.
I'm going to follow up a little bit, and Vice Chair, if I think this is where you're going. So, like, I'm looking at that section as well. Security services at a ratio of not less than 3 staff members for each 1,000 pupils. So, I'll just go with a school that I know pretty well, Bilbray Elementary, and that it's just under 1,000 pupils. Yes, I do know it. That we just celebrated our 20th anniversary. So, if say we were right at 1,000, so is this bill? Am I reading this right to say that they would have 3 security staffs now when they don't have any currently?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, if I may, one more follow-up. Is this, and so you have 1,000 per, 3 per 1,000, ish. Is that, where'd that number come from? Is there something, maybe that's best practice or something that you find out there for other districts or schools, maybe?
Yes, we did some research, and that was the average based on other school districts.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Giles. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? I was like, this is unprecedented. I told you. Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, please go ahead.
We can't get away without a question from me. We all know that. So my question is about the security services. I do think that is important as a teacher in a school. I know how essential those are. It just says security services in the bill. And at my school and the other schools I've worked at in the past, that could be student resource officers, that could be campus monitors, that could be school police. So does this bill take a stance on which of those it is, or would that be up to the principals about which of those roles they could fill to meet this ratio?
Roberta Lang for the record. I think it would leave it up to the principal and the SOTs in the building to decide what the best meets the needs of their school.
Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this. 2 quick ones, and just trying to understand the context. Is this bill would then ensure that our districts can't subcontract with independent contractors? It's so that they would have to use our people in the union?
That is the intent. And again, based in safety and background checks. And we want to do whatever we can do. And I've had extended conversations with Mr. Horn, who represents the administrators, and we're very sensitive to the fact it's fair for them to be impatient. At the same time, we want to work collectively to fill those positions and get those things done, have some constructive dialogue about what it's going to take, and if there is a need for additional resources, how do we do that safely? That is the overall intent, is to restrict the use of outside resources that are not subject to the same background scrutinies.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with that, so I appreciate that in the bill. And then, so my only question was on page 4, number 7, we strike out must be made in consultation, and it's after consulting. So does that mean it will be a forced placement, or will the principal still get to decide the hiring?
The principal would consult, the superintendent would consult with the principal and the area superintendent.
Thank you. And we do have some clarification on the definition of security services from Mr. Killian. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Council. Just to clarify on the question regarding security services, to the extent that there are any post-certified officers, so school resource officers, school police officers, those are not staff that are selected by the principal. Those are instead staff under the control of the district superintendent, and the district superintendent has sole discretion on the placement and the number of those to be placed within each individual school within a large school district. So the staff being referred to here, who are selected by the principal of the local school precinct, would be the non-post certified staff, so other security staff that are not otherwise peace officers.
Thank you for that clarification. Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing forward this language. I greatly appreciate it, and I really appreciate the fact that you're recognizing that it's more than the teachers that provide an educational setting. My question has to do with 5A, and that has to do with the custodial services at the ratio of the square footage. Really appreciate the use of this item. Do you know at what point we would know how many new employees that could mean, or how many more people that would mean that we would have to hire in the Clark County School District in particular, since this is only for Clark County, since it's the big school district that's being discussed?
Fred Horvath for the record. Thank you for the question. And there are 5 different levels that are provided by the Department of Education. I'm going out on a limb and say we're not interested in level 4 or level 5, which start with not generally acceptable and not considered healthy. And there are some places that may be level 1 that just is spotless. But it's a balance of those things, and I wish I could give you a specific. We've done a lot of work on what the incumbents look like. We know what the vacancies look like. It's a pretty fluid situation because unfortunately, it is unusual for us not to lose a custodian during the course of a week or a pay period because they found other employment opportunities that are more lucrative for them. It will not be insignificant. We currently have about 600 vacancies in that whole organization. How many it would add is still a work in progress, but at least it gives us an objective standard, is what we're really looking for, to work towards a solution.
And I follow up if I may.
I was just going to say that we have legal to step in to give you a federal standard too. So go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Council. Just for reference, that particular federal standard is, that level 2 cleaning standard is cleaning approximately 11,000 to 18,000 square feet per 8-hour shift for a custodian. So that would be the rough amount of square footage per custodial day that would be expected under this standard.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification as well. Wow. Yikes. And this is custodial, not lawn, not maintenance, yard maintenance. This is pure and simple cleaning, and it is for K-12. It's not priority of an elementary school or priority of a middle school. It is pre-K to 12, all buildings. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's agnostic when it comes to the type of school it is.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Fred Horvath. I'm just mess that up every time. Fred Horvath for the record, I apologize.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you.
Thank you. Committee? Okay. It looks like we're done for now. So if you want to step back, and then I can open it up for testimony in support. If there's anyone in Las Vegas who wishes to testify in support, feel free to fill up those chairs. But go ahead in Carson City.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are in strong support of SB 148, and thanks Senator Lang for bringing up such a critical issue with this bill. As an organization that supports measures to address gun violence in schools, we support the safety aspects of this with the staffing ratios. But we also support this because of the threat of outsourcing our school support personnel positions that has been around for a long time and is a dangerous one. Our support personnel are the people that make our schools run every single day. My mother does this every single day as a support professional at an elementary school in Las Vegas, the one that I went to. The thought of her or any other job being outsourced to an entity that is not the school or the school district is scary, and another form of an attempt to privatize our education system. I just want to add a few notes to this. On the note of security, my mother has no security personnel at her school. She is the person who is the first to interact with someone or people who come into her school, so she keeps a bat under her desk. That is an unacceptable way to make an employee deal with these situations. Also, most days they have no janitors, so there is no cleaning happening at her school. We need this bill, and we need to do better in this state because we are failing our kids and we are failing our employees. Please support SB 148. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Randy Saltero, representing Education Support Employees Association. I think you've heard all the, for the reasons why we support this bill. We represent these workers, and we would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, in support of SB 148 to prohibit outsourcing, ensure staffing ratios for custodial and campus security employees, and to ensure clarity and fairness during the selection of employees in the CCSD surplus process. Education support professionals are the backbone of CCSD, keeping schools running while ensuring students are safe, healthy, and ready to learn. While critical to the operations of schools, education support professionals tend to be at the bottom of district pay scales, with some ESPs making as little as $12 an hour and an overwhelming majority making less than a living wage. Last year, over 1,600 CCSD workers, mostly ESPs, were enrolled on Medicaid. Education support professionals reflect the Nevada communities they serve, and in CCSD, a majority are people of color. The reorganization of the Clark County School District aimed at decentralized decision-making, giving local school precincts more autonomy over school budgets and operations. However, this overhaul came with unintended consequences that negatively impacted many education support professionals. This decentralization created perverse incentives for local school precincts to consider outsourcing and understaffing positions critical to health and safety. SB 148 addresses this by setting minimum staffing ratios for custodial and campus security employees. Similar to language in SB 251, SB 148 affirms the collective bargaining agreements regarding the selection of staff and employees in the surplus process. For too long, ESPs have felt relegated among school employees. The CCSD reorganization has made this worse. SB 148 is a big step forward to giving ESPs the respect they deserve. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kalen Evans, and I'm the president of the Washoe Education Association, and we represent the certified professionals in the Washoe County School District. I'd like to thank Senator Lang for sponsoring SB 148. And even though this is a bill that only impacts CCSD, from our standpoint, we will always advocate for legislation that better supports our support staff across the state of Nevada. They are essential to the success of our students and to the success of our teachers. And we need to continue to empower these essential workers in our schools. Preventing outsourcing and establishing staffing guidelines is a very important issue for us to address, and we encourage your support of this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. Gratitude for Senator Lang for bringing this bill forward, and of course grateful to our support staff and the critical function that they provide to our students and our school community each day. We're in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff. Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers, and a member of the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. Once again, as have everyone else, my thanks to Senator Lang for bringing this bill. I checked with my contacts with this Clark County School District PD, and they tell me very simply, this is something they are very much supportive of. Additional layers of trained coverage for the safety of our students is paramount to their existence, and they want to see additional liaisons to help them do it. These people do that. That is a public safety issue for our most vital resources, our children. Obviously, that's why I'm here. And I'm here to ask for your support of this SB 148. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support? It doesn't look like that. There is. BPS, will you please go to the phone lines? Anyone in support?
Chair, the line is open and working with. There are no callers choosing to provide support testimony at this time.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will close support testimony and open it to opposition. Anyone here in Carson City in opposition, please fill up the table, those chairs. Okay, we got someone here. And anyone in Las Vegas, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilberry Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, and members of the Assembly Education Committee. My name is Jeff Horn, and I am the Executive Director of the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees, also known as CASAPE. Although CASAPE opposes SB 148, we do support components of the bill that will increase the number of custodians and campus security monitors assigned to schools. With that in mind, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the dangers that campus security monitors are exposed to each day. As you know, a campus security monitor at Von Tobel Middle School was shot yesterday while ensuring the safety of students. After I had the opportunity to speak with school officials, it appears that this brave employee will successfully recover from the injuries. The importance of hiring the best possible staff for each school is critical, not only for students and staff safety, but for improved act. Like several bills that you will hear this week and next, continue to strip away the authority of the building leader to hire the most effective employees, while at the same time holding principals solely accountable for student outcomes and climate. It is universally accepted that a quality teacher has the most impact on student learning. If this is true, why would we limit a principal's ability to hire the most impactful educators? Unfortunately, like any large group, there are always a handful of ineffective employees that do not belong in their current role. SB 148, if it becomes law as written, will ensure that this small handful of educators will always have a place teaching our most precious resource, our kids. Let me be direct. CASAPE supports protecting students' rights over the rights of poor performing adults. I would hope to believe that we all do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in opposition? BPS, will you go to the phone lines? See if there's anyone on the phone lines in opposition.
Chair, the line is open and working with. There are no callers choosing to provide opposition testimony at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will close opposition testimony and move to neutral. Anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas in neutral, please fill the chairs. Not seeing anyone. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line in neutral?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, I will invite I think we did have one question for you. Would you mind? Then, yeah, so it was kind of a sort of a groundswell that we were all kind of discussing. Just a quick clarification, and it is hypothetical, but if this is in statute, what happens if you can't find the workers to fill these spots? You had, Mr. Hort, you had said, people could go to a fast food restaurant and make, $18 an hour and things. So what is it, who would be who would take the blame for that, I guess? Who would, what sort of outcomes do we see if we can't fill the positions that are in statute?
Well, I think it's Fred Horvath for the record. One of these days I'll do that. Right? So my apologies one more time. So Fred Horvath for the record. We're dealing with that every day, and we're dealing with it for the last 4 years. And from our perspective, we believe our collective efforts through job fairs, through fixing the compensation piece, we will be able to recruit, accelerate the background process. We will be able to create a pool of people available. At the end of the day, I don't see a point in time where we need to point fingers at each other. We need to create a pool of people available to fill those vacancies. So I don't have a direct answer as to what the consequence will be, other than I'm confident in speaking for everybody that I've been involved with that we're 100% committed to creating the employment pool to satisfy the vacancies at the local schools.
Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, if I could add to that. I think we can look in our schools now and see about the vacancies that we have, both in teachers and in support staff. And we aren't pointing fingers at those vacancies and why it's happening. I mean, we're wondering why it's happening. We want to get more people, and we're always going to make every effort we can to fill those positions. And we'll continue to do that under this bill to fill the support staff positions. And we hope that you'll support us and pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will close the hearing. Thank you very much for being here. And I will open the hearing on SB 340. Welcome, Senator Dondero Loop. This measure revises provisions relating to education. And welcome, Senator, to this committee. Nice to see you. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Marilyn Dondero Loop, and I am representing Senate District 8 in Clark County, and I'm happy to be here today to introduce Senate Bill 340. This bill helps to address student learning loss by requiring school districts to provide summer school. As we continue to understand the full impact that COVID-19 had on our communities, we know that many of our students experienced a decline in academic and social and emotional progress. In fact, according to the Institute of Education Sciences, public school leaders estimated that 49% of their students began the 22-23 school year behind grade level in at least one academic subject, compared to 50% the year before. Prior to the pandemic, 36% of our students on average were behind grade level. To make matters worse, the effects of learning loss are even greater on certain student populations. For schools with over 75% minority students, for example, 61% of the students began the 22-23 school year behind grade level, compared to 64% the school year before and 50% before the pandemic. Research conducted by Harvard University's Center for Education Policy Research and Stanford University's Educational Opportunity Project recently reported that on average, public school students in grades 3 through 8 in the United States lost the equivalent of a half of a year in math and a quarter a year in reading. In addition to academic deficiencies, we continue hearing from our teachers and school and district staff that student behavior has been a significant issue since the pandemic. According to the Institute of Education Sciences, more than 8 in 10 public schools reported having seen stunted behavioral and social-emotional development in their students because of COVID-19 pandemic. While life has returned to normal in many ways for many students across the country, we still have those struggling with the effects of this public health crisis. Addressing the reality of these academic and behavioral inadequacies is an ongoing challenge and one that takes time. Senate Bill 340 continues this work that the legislature started last session through Senate Bill 173, and that was once again in the 2021 session. I will now walk you through the provisions of this bill. Section 1 requires school districts and state public charter school authorities to use available resources to provide summer school and requires these entities to submit to the state superintendent a plan to provide in-person or virtual summer school to pupils in pre-kindergarten through grade 12 in 23 and 24. School districts and charter school governing boards must also provide for transportation and meal services to these students. Additionally, this bill outlines requirements relating to the hiring and payment of public school, summer school personnel. Section 2 requires school districts and the charter authority to submit a report relating to summer school, including pupil achievement measures, to the state superintendent of public instruction. The superintendent is then required to submit a compilation of these reports to various governmental entities, including the legislature. Senate Bill 340 is to enhance the academic recovery of Nevada students by requiring districts to provide summer school. And I would tell you that there was a New York Times article called "Students Lost 1/3 of a School Year to a Pandemic." And this is really amazing to watch. I have 5 grandchildren who are at various levels of, from high school down to elementary, and I saw all of them react differently. So, Madam Chair, I would submit that this was highly successful in the years prior to us coming back to the legislature. I can tell you, even my own grandkids who thought they didn't want to go when they got there couldn't wait to go, and now want to know if they're going to get to do it again this summer. So I have dubbed this bill my Eliana bill, because every time I call home, she wants to know if she gets to go to summer school. I recognize the inherent issues that any school may have, but I'll reference a school I know, like Chair Bilbray Axelrod. I know that Don Darrow Elementary works very, very hard, and I was a proud teacher there at one time, and know that even though that school may not have summer school, which I don't know for sure, but I believe they're not having summer school, I know another school, Pickett Elementary, may have summer school, and it may be very... The thing I love about it is the teachers get to interact with kids on a whole different level. The kids aren't just sitting in a seat all day. They're interacting with their teachers on a whole different level. So for me, this is not only for my love at teaching, but for my love of kids, that we need to get going on the right path. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this bill. My daughter has done summer school since she's been in high school to get ahead. She's a double major at LVA, and so I appreciate this. And we also know that there's a lot of learning loss that happens over the summer vacation. I mean, my daughter's going to hate me for saying this, but summer is way too long. Yeah,
Madam Chair, yeah, it's true, and we've always had summer school and credit recovery for high school students, right? They've always been able to go take PE if they didn't want to take it during the school year. They've always been able to get credit recovery if they had a class they struggled in. So this just adds those kids K through 8, if you will.
That's great. Thank you. I know we do have a question from Assemblywoman Thomas.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Senator, for bringing this refreshing bill, because, it's not a reactionary bill. It is a solution, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. When I was reading this, I wanted to make sure that I understood charter schools and public schools would provide transportation for their students. And I just want to make sure that that was what I was reading.
Thank you, Marilyn Dondero Loop, for the record. Yes, that is what this bill asks, is that transportation and food is required. And all schools, as I mentioned, do not have this program, but the schools that do, we would like them to do put those things into place so that children can get there and be fed.
Thank you for that clarification, important clarification. Next, Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward the language about summer school. My question has to do with page 2. I'm just making sure that I'm understanding correctly. Page 2, section 1, line, basically it has to do with the plan, where line 5 and 6, where it goes over the plan and everything that is necessary. The Board of Education, or the Department of Education, all that it's doing is just getting this plan put in. It's not approving or denying the plan, if I'm understanding correctly, number one. And number two, we start summer school in 4 weeks. And so or even less for some districts. So I'm just curious as to whether there's been discussion as well about trying to expand it to the 2025 school year, so that we're not in this boat 2 years from now doing the same plan in May of a school year.
Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. Thank you very much for the question. So when I first did this bill during the pandemic, we did a 2-year piece so that we could see how it worked, see how everybody liked it, and it was, like I said, successful. We know things have changed. We know we're into a second group. I can promise you I'll be here in 25 and I'll have another bill. So even if I have to go in 2-year stints, I'll be happy to do that. We'll see how that goes. Thank you.
If I may, and thank you. And just to verify, though, the department cannot approve or deny these plans. This is just the school board or trustees and superintendents filing the plan with the school board, with the superintendent of public instruction, if I'm understanding that correctly.
We're just asking them to provide a plan. I mean, you could have, and I won't use a number of schools. I won't use a number is what I mean. You could have 5 schools do this. You could have 25 schools do this. If you're in a small county, you may have 1 school that does this. It's just a plan to provide some summertime assistance and experiences for our kids.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Vice Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, and welcome. Just a couple of questions. This is probably just clarity. It seems as though the intention, we're looking at the next 2 years, and the intention really, based upon what we see in Section 1, is for those who are either credit deficient or learning deficient in some way, and then also students with disabilities or English language learners. That's the target of this, correct?
Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. We gave those as suggestions. If you'll read on page 2, line about 12 or 13, it says including without limitation. And the reason is because we wanted to give some examples of students that may attend at a school for whatever, but that does not mean that you would not add. I mean, frankly, I don't know that my granddaughter fits into all of these. She fits into some of these maybe, but she would go because she can't wait to get there. So she would go no matter what. So these are just examples, and that's why it says without limitation.
Right, so it could be anyone.
Absolutely.
And then another area, thank you for the clarification, and just one more, which brought me to the response you just made. So every district has to do this, but not every school.
100% correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next question, Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always so good to see you, Senator. So a couple of questions. You touched on a little bit when we talk about charter schools and the transportation portion, and then you said may provide summer school. For charter schools, is the school district going to pay for? They don't get transportation dollars now, so how would the charter school pay for that transportation?
So thank you very much, Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. Actually, the Charter School Authority has currently about, and this is from I believe Senate Bill 495, if I'm going back in my memory here. They were allotted $15 million in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 353 of the NRS to address the impacts of learning loss. So that money is still sitting there. They have not used all that money. So there is money there for transportation. And I would submit that I would tell you a lot of kids in different areas don't necessarily need the transportation. These schools are, I don't know, it depends on the school that it's at, because some schools are going to have a lot of kids from right in their area, and then other schools may not. When you're in a high school setting, kids may or may not be able to get there on their own, but there is funding available for all of this.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Dondero-Loop. It's great to have you back here in the Education Committee. I do have a question, just because it's obviously a very quick turnaround time, and I think that's my large concern. It's just because it's not. I really love this legislation. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of summer school. In fact, when my school didn't, when I was a child and my school didn't offer summer school, my mom did school at home. We literally had a whiteboard the size of the kitchen wall, and we did summer school at home. So I definitely believe that summer school is effective and helps propel a child's education, keeps them on track with what they need to be. My concern really is just like with the timeliness of putting all of this together with the turnaround, and if there was any consideration to kind of put it, like obviously maybe requiring some type of report for this summer school, because by the time this bill is signed, I mean, hopefully summer schools will already have been done. I think in many districts they will have either just started or just about to finish. And so I'm just wondering if there's consideration for maybe requiring some type of report for the summer school for the 2023, and then requiring, I understand the need for the requirements and kind of requiring that for the future. And then regarding your previous statement, this is kind of separate, but regarding your previous statement regarding transportation, I would agree that transportation might not always be necessary for many schools, probably more necessary for magnet schools than anything else. If that, maybe we should change that shall in line 28 regarding transportation to may provide transportation. Thank you.
Marilyn Dondero-Loop for the record. Thank you very much for those suggestions. I feel like we did this during a pandemic. And so for me, I'm like, we've already done this. We have some things in place. I would also tell you that the larger school districts and possibly some of the small have already got something in place. They're already planning to do this. So this is not something that they have to turn around tomorrow and figure out. The actual plan or what they submit is not due in June, for example. If you look at section 2 on page 3, on or before November 30th, 2023 and November 30th, 24, the Board of Trustees of each school district and charter school shall submit to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction a report. So their reports aren't due until after it's over with, if that's what you were referencing, Assemblywoman. And then while I recognize the transportation piece, I just think it's, like I said, it's important that we value this. And I think that's one of the ways for us to do this. I just think it's important. I think it's important for us to help these kids. And I get all the pitfalls, and we can sit here all afternoon and say, we don't have this, we don't have that. But, this morning in our subcommittee, I said, I feel like education is like that game show on TV called The Wall. And we stand at the top of the wall and we push this ball down and we're praying it goes in the million. But if it goes in the $1, we go, oh well, right? Because it's a game show. And I feel like that's what we do with education. We stand at the top, we throw this ball down and we go, let's just keep our fingers crossed. And I think it's really important that we stop keeping our fingers crossed and just put some stuff in place. Let's just do this and let's value the kids. Let's do what's right, and let's move forward with it. We can find all kinds of reasons, and by the way, I've been there. I taught 30 years. I can find all kinds of reasons if I want why this won't work. I can tell you every one of them, and if we went through this committee, every one of us could find one. But I'm just hoping that we don't find any reasons and that we move forward. So Thank you, and thank you for your suggestions.
Thank you. And one last quick thing. One of the other things that I noticed in the bill on line 17, one of my suggestions, I know we put pupils in grades 11 or 12 who are credit deficient. I think that might be expanded, though, for pupils that are credit deficient, just because obviously working with, I think they could be deficient in middle school as well, and high school, so just allowing for that expansiveness. Thank you.
Marilyn Dondero Loop, for the record, 100% Assemblywoman. Like I said earlier, if you look at line 13, it does say under the plan, including without limitation. So any school district, any charter school can plug in what they want. They could say kids 9, 10, 11, and 12. So thank you very much for that suggestion.
Thank you. And for clarification, when we did this during COVID, did charter schools, were they required to offer transportation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We do have a few more questions, but I did kind of want to put on the record, I know we found out we could do a lot of things that we thought we couldn't do during COVID. I'm a big fan of finding silver linings and things. So we can do this. We pulled it together before, we can do it again, and it's the right thing to do for kids. So wanted to say that. We have a couple more questions. I know we have Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, and then we'll go to Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. As a teacher, I think it is essential that we have our summer school programs for our students. I had many questions, but they've now been whittled down by all of my colleagues. And so I am going to follow up on Assemblywoman Torres just on the subjects. I know you said including without limitation, but as a social studies teacher, I know world history is one of our top failed courses in high school. It's a sophomore level course. And so that wouldn't fall under 11 or 12, and it wouldn't fall under number 5 on line 21 and 22, which lists science, technology, engineering, arts, or mathematics. Now, before you say without limitation, which I know is going to be your answer, I know also when we list things, it becomes a checklist and the other things become secondary or things that maybe aren't a priority. And so I just wondered if you are open to any changes on that, or if there was a reason that you prioritize these other subjects over English and social studies.
Thank you very much, Marilyn Dondero Loop, for the record. Frankly, we just put a list. If I was in your shoes, Assemblywoman, and I knew my school or a school by me was having summer school, I would be marching into the principal and saying, hey, I'd love to offer this, and I think I can get lots of students to take it. And that's exactly why, because I could put social studies there, and then somebody else would say, but what about dancing? And somebody else would say, right? And so we had to kind of just put some ideas there. We feel like this list, if you will, gives us those students that we want to reach for sure. Right? We want to reach those kids who are deficient. We want to reach those students that maybe needed some more help in kindergarten to move forward. The middle school kids, maybe those are the kids who haven't been in school since 4th grade, right? And now they went to 6th grade, and whoa, I watched my own grandson do this. I mean, he went from not going to school to being on steroids with homework. I mean, it was like whoosh, total. And so maybe that's the kid that if needs to go back and even learn some study skills. So there's so many options. I know that one school did with 4th graders, rather than sitting in their classes all day, they did science experiments with PE, with science, with art, whatever the subjects were, they came up with science experiments. So they actually did kind of science all day, but it was just in the different, levels of what the curriculum that they use. So there's so many awesome ideas out there, and we know that, and you know that because you're a teacher. So if you had a summer school class with social studies, you're probably not going to teach straight out of the book, right? So that would be my suggestion, and thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair. So my other question is, I know you mentioned that it doesn't have to be all schools. And so I have a two-part. One, if a school district offered this at one single school in the entire district, would they then be technically meeting the requirements of this bill? And number two, is there a way we can encourage them to not just have one school in the entire district? Because we know some schools are more equipped to support their students than others. And so how do we ensure that the kids that need it the most are getting that support?
Thank you, Marilyn Dondero Loop listen to me. You'd think I hadn't said that enough today. So the reason they come up with a plan is for that reason. Perhaps I'll use this area and other areas. Perhaps Hug High is a better place to have summer school than DeMonte Ranch because of just the location or the amount of kids that might want to go there or what have you, right? You might have the high school in Winnemucca has it, but there's only one high school there, right? You might have two elementaries in, I don't know, another small town, and you might have one have summer school, but the other one doesn't. In Las Vegas, you might have, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, whatever number they come up with in sort of different regions. So it depends. It depends how the school district plans to do that. And it certainly doesn't denote the teachers that work there. In other words, if you don't work at whatever high school and you want to teach there for summer school, I'm sure they would be happy to have you. So thank you.
I'm going to jump on that for 1 second because, and maybe this would be best if Asher Killian would hype in on this, but the way I'm reading this bill is that it's requiring the district to target the pupils who are most at risk of loss of learning rather than limiting what summer school is. And Mr. Killian, if you want to, I believe that's correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So that is correct. Under Section 1, subsection 1, paragraph B, which is where this list of different kinds of pupils exists. All that paragraph does is require these plans to target the pupils who are most at risk of loss of learning to receive these services through summer school. And then it provides a list in subparagraphs 1 through 8 of various kinds of populations of pupils who may be most at risk of loss of learning. This paragraph does not limit the pupils to whom services can be provided. It just provides a list of examples of pupils to whom this bill would require summer school be targeted by the districts who effectively would benefit the most from attending summer school.
Thank you for that clarification. Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this. For the past 3 summers, we've been partnering with 2 nonprofits and a charter school in East Las Vegas to make sure we had summer school for 3 summers for K through 12. So it was all different types of students at one school. So just a quick clarification, because you had said for the district, it's not every school, it's just the district. Is it the same thing for the charter authority? So is it long as one school in the authority does it, or is it all of them?
Marilyn Dondero, for the record, no, the charter school authority could have as many as they wanted, every school or one school.
Thank you. With that, I think we will have you step back, and if there's anyone here in the room or in Las Vegas in support, please fill up those chairs.
Good afternoon, Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. We're speaking in support of Senate Bill 340. This continues work that we worked on and supported last session, so we just want to keep seeing that good work proceed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I am the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress, here today in support of SB 340. The learning loss caused by COVID-19 is real. Learning loss over the summer is real. As I stated before, my mother is an education professional, and we have seen the effects of it firsthand. I have seen it, we all have, making sure that summer school is an option for all kids, but that they are able to have transportation and meals, and that their teachers and school staff are compensated fairly for that, is a big step in addressing the learning loss we've all seen. Please support SB 340. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, chairs, members of the committee. Paul Muratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is also in support of SB 340. As you've heard, the learning loss, of course, is a concern to all of us, and obviously, with employers in Southern Nevada hiring the graduates of the Clark County School District and so forth, any efforts to help close those educational gaps are important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line in support of SB 340?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close support and move to opposition. Anyone here in Carson City in opposition? You can fill those chairs. Anyone in Las Vegas, if you're down there in opposition, please fill those chairs. And go ahead when you're ready.
Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations with the Clark County School District. Really appreciated this discussion. Here in opposition, but I want to be clear, we absolutely agree that summer school is critical. We're offering summer school and have offered summer school for a number of years. We're planning for this summer. It gets started May 30th, which is just a couple of weeks out. And I think we really worry about being able to fulfill the targeting and reporting requirements on top of what's already been planned and collectively bargained and negotiated and ready for student registration. I would also add that, I guess, I found the conversation really interesting on the CCSD side. I think we'll have to go back and re-review this conversation and re-review the legislation to make sure that we're fully understanding the requirements of the targeting and the language therein. And so we do absolutely appreciate the Senator's commitment to education, the education space, and ensuring that our students' learning can continue to be accelerated. And we look forward to additional conversations with her. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przenski here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And believe me, it's really tough to come before you and oppose the bill that Marilyn Dondero Loop has brought forward because she's kind of an icon of education here in the legislature, and I think we have hardly ever, if ever, opposed the bill. But in this particular bill, we have some concerns about the summer school bill as it's written right now. First of all, I just want to reconfirm and reassure all of you that summer school has gone on for many years. I think it's been too many years since I was a superintendent, so I don't want to give all that info, but we always had summer school, and it certainly wasn't something that I invented. It was in our school district for many years, and many school districts here in Carson, here in the state of Nevada. So I just want to clarify that. And summer school should be a local decision. And talking with the superintendents, and the reason that they have some concerns is meeting all the parameters of the bill. It should be a local decision, and as a superintendent in my conversations with them say, what you offer is based on what you're seeing with your student data, and that changes from year to year. You're looking at your fall, probably map tests, seeing how the kids did in the fall, and then you're watching the progress through the year, and of course you're getting input from your teachers as to what needs to happen. For instance, I know in Carson, and this is the first time I've ever heard it offered, but they've got Ready Rock Kindergarten going this year, and they started on their curriculum building for that particular program in January because they saw their kindergartners who came in not only were not prepared, but they had behavior issues, and so that's part of their summer school program this year. So they're looking at what they have and how the kids are doing, and that's how you determine, of course, what you're going to offer. It's also another issue about who can you get to come and work at summer school, because some teachers do not do summer school, and I have to say that a lot of people are going back to school themselves. Many teachers working on advanced degrees are in summer school themselves, and there are other family issues that prevent some of the teachers from working. So you kind of have to look at who you can get there to who's going to be able to teach? And you start asking that in January and February. So it's a long planning process for summer school. The other issue is in part of the bill, and a concern that has been expressed to me, is that the mandates of providing transportation and breakfast and lunch is another concern, that superintendents will not be able to adhere to the law there, because again, problems that districts ran into this year are of course, getting the bus drivers to go, and that's especially important out in the rural areas, because some of these kids have to go a long way and you have to have transportation, getting enough transportation. And another problem that some of them expressed to me, which surprised me, but getting people to actually work the lunch programs and the meal programs. So last concern is, of course, the rate of pay this year in summer school. And the ones that I spoke with, they're able to pay a good salary commensurate with what's in the contract, because a lot of them are using funds that were provided because of COVID, the federal funds, which has been wonderful. They're able to do that, but in years going forward, will they be able to do that? Because keep in mind, of course, summer school is not funded by the state. It has to be funded by the local school district. So those are just some of our concerns, and so happy to work with the senator on any amendments that we can make to this bill, and we appreciate you listening to our concerns today. Thank you so much.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Education. My name is Gil Lopez with the Charter School Association of Nevada. Here in opposition to the transportation portion of the bill. We would be more comfortable if we went from a shall to a may for that portion. Just a little bit of context, only one of our schools, our public charter schools, offers what we consider traditional transportation. So this would be a challenge. In addition, just a little clarification, not clarification, but we did some research on the AB 495 from 2021. This was part of the mining deal that allowed certain funds to go to learning laws for public charter schools. So from this, it was only allocated for Title I schools, which is about half of our charter schools are Title I. So our schools have applied for that funding in a sum of $28.4 million. And they have been awarded about $15 million, but it's been about 2 years before kind of the wheels of that money coming down. So it's only been probably around the last month that money started trickling down. So while on paper it looks like there's $15 million there, those funds have been allocated and are slowly coming down to our charter schools. So thank you very much, and we appreciate the Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Las Vegas in opposition? No, there's somebody behind that pole, but you're not moving, so I'm going to think no. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line in opposition? Yeah.
Okay, there are no callers. There are no callers choosing to provide opposition testimony at this time.
Thank you. I should have said column, behind the column. Okay, with that, we will close opposition and open it to neutral. Is there anyone here in neutral or in Las Vegas in neutral? And on the phone lines, anyone in neutral?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close testimony. Would you like to welcome back?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. I don't very often come up for closing comments, but there's a couple things I've got to say. Number one, when people oppose something that's literally already in place, it's just mind-boggling to me, but we've come up with a lot of reasons why this can't work, and I've come up with a lot of reasons why it can. And one being that when we say the school districts have to pay for themselves, the school districts are funded through state appropriations. We do that in this body. So it doesn't matter what we're doing at a school, it is funded by the state. So that's one thing I want to make clear. The other thing is, there's an old saying, what if I gave a party and nobody came? Well, what if we had summer school and everybody came? So let's do what's right for kids. And if you haven't read the book, It's a Fine, Fine School by Sharon Creech, please do. I read it often to children in classrooms. It's a wonderful book about a principal that loves his school so much and thinks it's such a fine, fine school that we should have school every day of the year, much to the children's, angst. But it's a very cute book, and it talks about what a fine, fine school, and wouldn't it be great if we could all say that? Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I know that the kids at Dondero Elementary as well as Bilbray Elementary think they go to a fine, fine school. So thank you very much, Senator. And with that, we will close the hearing and open the hearing on SB 442. Come right back up. I love that you went and sat back and then came back up.
I sort of wanted to make it look like, I showed back up again. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think the people behind the column might be with this particular bill. So thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, for the record, I am Marilyn Dondero Loop, representing Senate District 8 in Clark County, and I am presenting Senate Bill 442, which enacts the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. This compact is an exciting opportunity for Nevada today. I am joined by my co-presenters, Dr. Georgianne Rice in Las Vegas, and Adam Deersing, Jimmy Adams, and Kelly Mae Douglas, who are on Zoom, I believe, but they may be in Las Vegas. We had a few technology issues, so we're crossing our fingers. Dr. Rice is a longtime educator from the Clark County School District, and so I'll tell you more about her in just a minute. Before I go into the specifics of the bill, I would like to provide you with some context. The Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact is an initiative of the United States Department of Defense, the Council of State Governments, and the Nevada Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. It is a licensing compact to help alleviate barriers teachers face when relocating or seeking employment in a new state. The legislature has debated on measures over the years to address these and other barriers to teaching, including the near unanimous passage of SB 100 from 2019, which expedited Nevada teaching license applications for spouses of active duty members of the U.S. Armed Forces and allowed those members, veterans, and their spouses who obtain a license through another state's alternative route to licensure program to obtain a license here in Nevada. These and other opportunities will help support our focus on removing barriers to teaching and will address, in part, the teacher shortage crisis that we face. My co-presenters will speak more on the compact, including the development process and how it works. But first, I would just like to tell you that Senate Bill 442 enacts the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, which establishes requirements for the issuance of a teacher license to an applicant who holds an equivalent license from another state that is also a member of the compact, and the sharing of files and information regarding investigation and discipline of a teacher between member states. This bill requires the Commission on Professional Standards in Education to adopt regulations to carry out the provisions contained in the compact and provide for the licensure pursuant to the compact. Additionally, Senate Bill 442 exempts the person who obtains licensure pursuant to the compact from the examination required for initial licensing. This bill also exempts a person who applies for a license under the compact from submitting proof with the application that he or she has completed an approved course of study or training. Finally, it's important to note that the compact becomes effective upon ratification from 10 states. According to the teacherpact.org, currently Utah, Colorado, and Kentucky have enacted legislation, and another 16 states, including Nevada, have pending legislation. Now I would like to turn this over to Dr. Georgianne Rice in Las Vegas, who has been working diligently on this measure, and others, if they are there, to address that as well. Like I said earlier, Dr. Rice is a well-known education. We cannot give her enough accolades for all she has done for Nevada, and we respect her immensely. And please go ahead when you're ready, Dr. Rice.
Thank you. I'd first like to thank Senator Dondero Loop for shepherding this bill through the legislature. I think it's very needed and will help us in our quest to fill many of those positions that remain vacant. I'd like to introduce our co-presenters first. First, we have Kelly May Douglas, who is representing the State Defense Liaison Office out of the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense put up the original funding that was necessary in order to seek these reciprocity licenses. Kelly May Douglas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kelly May Douglas, and I'm here to represent the Department of Defense in support of the policy expressed within SB 442. I'm pleased to share the highly beneficial impact that policies such as the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact has on the military community. The department has prioritized working with states to resolve licensure issues for military members and their spouses for many years. As our military members and their families move from state to state, being able to transfer a professional license easily and quickly to obtain employment is critical to their economic stability and well-being. Specifically, military spouses are disproportionately affected by state-specific licensure requirements that can cause delays and gaps in employment, with over 36% of the working population requiring state licensure to practice in their professions, and an annual cross-state relocation rate more than 10 times higher than their civilian counterparts. Accordingly, military spouses experience unemployment and underemployment at significantly higher rates than their civilian peers. After over a decade working with states to modify licensure policy to assist military members and their spouses, we've identified occupational licensure compacts, such as the ITMC, as the optimal mechanism for creating true reciprocity among all participating states. In adopting the ITMC, Nevada can increase its pool of highly qualified teachers, many of whom are members of the military community, address the documented teacher shortages being experienced within the state and throughout the nation. Students. Given that teaching has been found to be one of the most prevalent of all professions for military spouses, this policy has the potential to have a significant impact on our population. It is important to note, however, that licensure compacts, such as the ITMC, not only benefit military spouses, but also apply to all eligible professionals coming into the state, to include active duty service members, members of the reserves, veterans, and civilians. Thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to provide comments on the positive impact of this measure to the Department of Defense and military families.
Thank you, Kelly May Douglas. I'd like to now introduce Alan Dursing, representing the Council of State Governments.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Adam Deersing, Senior Policy Analyst for the Council of State Governments. I wanted to take the opportunity to speak today to discuss the development process for this compact, as well as the national perspective of legislation to enact the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact across the country, was touched on by Dr. Rice. The development of this model legislation began way back in September of 2021, although these goals have been a matter of discussion in this community for many, many years. But in September of 2021, we assembled a technical assistance group comprised of legislators, state education department officials, members of professional associations, licensed teachers, and other stakeholders, which included Senator Dondero Loop. The group met over the course of several months to determine the needs of the profession and in mobility, what model would be best used to approach those needs. A separate drafting team transitioned those recommendations and model from the technical assistance group into a full draft of the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, which went through several months of public comment and stakeholder review over the summer of 2022. The final draft of the model legislation, which is reflected in this bill, was released in November of 2022. After that point, we have seen significant movement in the early legislative sessions this year to enact the Teacher Mobility Compact. To date, 5 states have signed the model legislation into law, those being Colorado, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. Several additional states have passed the legislation through at least one chamber of their legislature. And as noted in the legislation, once the 10th state enacts the model legislation, the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact will go into effect, and the commission will be convened, represented by all states that have enacted the model legislation. I want to thank you for your time today and the opportunity to speak to you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dursing. Now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, Jimmy Adams.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Hello, as Ms. Rice said, I am Jimmy Adams. I am the Executive Director of the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, or NASTEC. Thank you for allowing my colleagues and me to be here today to talk on behalf of the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. For over 95 years, NASDAQ has worked to improve the portability of educator licenses. In 1965, NASDAQ established the first agreement between states to support educators who are relocating across state lines. Since then, the agreements between states have had many names. Our current version is known as the NASDAQ Interstate Agreement. This agreement was successful in that it opened lines of communication and resulted in the establishment of agreements regarding the minimum requirements for professional license. But the NASDAQ Interstate Agreement is not reciprocity, it is not binding on the jurisdiction, and it is not an interstate compact. Thanks to funding through the Department of Defense and technical support from the Council of State Governments National Center for Interstate Compacts, NASDAQ was selected to provide administrative support for states interested in using an interstate compact to facilitate the portability of educator licenses. The Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, which you are discussing today, Senate Bill 442, allows each member state to identify those high-level licenses within their state that meet the same level of professionalism as in other states, where the professional teacher holds a bachelor's degree, has completed a state-approved education preparation program with no outstanding requirements, and is subject to a criminal background records check by the receiving state. By meeting these criteria, the compact member receiving state can issue an equivalent license based on the three components of content, grade range, and student population, eliminating the overhead and processing paperwork and delays due to the teacher having to provide additional verifying documentation that the receiving state has already verified. Through this compact, states maintain their autonomy and have full control over the licenses they issue. The compact simply creates a streamlined process by which a teacher can receive a license and become eligible for employment. This is a win-win, as professional educators gain increased mobility, which is consistent with being a professional, and states benefit from a wider door of effective educators, including sharing of educators across state borders, teleteaching, and reclaiming those who have left the profession rather than try to navigate the out-of-state requirements for licensure. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Georgianne Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the passage of SB 442. As stated, my name is Dr. Georgianne Rice. I retired in 2007 with 34 years of service to the Clark County School District, with the last 16 of those 34 serving as the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources for the Clark County School District. My remarks today come from that experience and my continuing work with states and school districts in our country as part of the leadership team of Heroes to Education. As an aside, on the basis of this particular bill and other things we have going on, I've already begun to work with Nellis and with Creech to be able to reach out to military spouses before they even arrive at Nellis when they're being transferred in. Nellis is working with us when they do those orientation webinars. Clark County School District will be part of those webinars explaining the jobs that are available and helping people 2 and 3 months out in order to apply for not only the job, but whatever licenses are required. Every month, the Department of Veterans Services receives from the U.S. Department of Labor a list of those people all over the country, all over the world, who are getting out of the service, who have indicated that they want to come back to Nevada in order to live. Working with that department, we will again be able to reach out throughout for the entire state, those veterans and their spouses who are coming back or who are relocating to Nevada to know about the jobs that we already have available and to help them begin that application process. The issues that this compact addresses are not unique to our state, but are of particular importance to our state. At the beginning of this second semester of this current school year, Clark County School District had 1,400 certified positions vacant, unable to find teachers necessary. Washoe had almost 300 such positions, and even Lyon County, a much smaller county, had 28 teacher vacancies. Looking at the coming school year, before we even know the number of teachers who will resign or the number who will retire, Clark County is already recruiting for 1,300 teachers, Washoe for 350, and Lyon is facing the biggest shortage of teachers that they've ever had, with 100 expected vacancies. At the same time, as we all know, colleges of education all around the country are dropping in enrollment. And you just have to turn on the news at night to hear all the negatives about public education. We face an uphill battle. In my 16 years, a majority of our new hires that had to be sought from outside our borders here in Nevada because we could not produce enough teachers for all 17 districts. That issue has not changed and has even grown worse. With the bill before the legislature to decrease class size, a much-needed initiative, we will need to find and hire even greater numbers of teachers. Remember, we are also competing with companies and fields offering many more extrinsic rewards than we are able to offer. Again, thank you for this opportunity to advocate on behalf of this very important bill. And again, I emphasize that the first 10 states to pass the compact into law will have the right to send a representative from the Department of Ed to D.C. to draft the governing rules and regulations. And as you heard, so far, 19 states have introduced the bill, and we want to be number 6 to actually pass it. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, I'd like to thank Senator Dondero Loop, and I'd like to thank Joyce Woodhouse, both of whom have been instrumental in getting this far with the bill. And thank you, committee members, for listening for the things we had to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony and your obviously, you have so many years of experience within the district, so we thank you for, as we say, none of us retire, we just get repurposed. So thank you very much. Were you open for questions now? Okay. A lot of them were answered, so by your very thorough testimony, but we do have, I believe, 3. So I'll start with Assemblywoman Mosca, then go to Assemblywoman Anderson, and then to De Silva. Was there any other questions? I should have just assumed it, and then we'll end with Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Please go ahead, Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, and your amazing team. I'm very excited about this, as you know, as a military spouse, and talked to Kelly about this as well before the session started, so really grateful that you took it on. So my only question, you alluded to it, so that was great, but with alternative route to licensure, it does say, it starts it on page 18 to 21, and it says that as long as it's equivalent. So just wondering, because I know there are so many different ARL programs, if someone came here and it didn't match, will there be a way that people can appeal it, or just for those ARL teachers, will there be a way for them to make sure it's reciprocated?
Marilyn Dondero Loop, for the record. I believe I'm going to let Dr. Rice answer that question.
Probably Jimmy Adams. I'll give it a try. Alternative route is very, very important, as you know. And I believe that what is provided is we have states that have approved alternative route programs. And so it's not a matter of once they've approved then you look class by class or whatever. I can tell you that it's also designed for that military spouse who comes here and has a provisional license, because as we know, with alternative route, you get a provisional license in effect, and then after you've served your 3 years as a practicing teacher, then you're in line for a professional license. This provides that that military spouse who comes with that alternative route provisional license will get the license from the receiving state that is also a member of the compact. Mr. Adams?
That was very well said, Georgette, and I appreciate you sharing that with him. The compact is really about the licensure. It's not, or the license that the teacher holds. It's not really about the preparation that the person went through in order to get that high-level professional license. As Georgianne said, there are special accommodations for military spouses that may have a temporary provisional type license. What will happen, though, typically, and I know that your office there in Nevada will also work with anyone who would like to obtain a license coming from another state. If a person doesn't qualify under the compact, all of your current routes to be able to obtain a license in Nevada still exist. This is just a streamlined process for those who've reached that high level that do meet the qualifications for the compact. So I can tell you that every state in the United States, they work very diligently to issue licenses to anyone who is eligible for a license in that state. And so if the compact's not able to help, they're not able to do it through the compact, they will, in most cases, be able to find a way to issue a license to that person as long as they qualify for a Nevada license.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward the language. I have two questions. The first is not one that I had messaged you earlier. The first question has to be with, you continually use the phrase for teacher, which understand why, but this is for all education licensed personnel, including counselors, speech language pathologists, or this is only for teachers specifically? So I just wanted to clarify that. I could.
Mr.
I
Adams.
can address that if you'd like me to. The compact is actually set up for the teacher license, but the language in the compact allows a jurisdiction to go ahead and say, if you have other licenses in addition to the teaching license, just be a school psychologist, be a teacher, be a counselor or an administrator, then it's up to that jurisdiction to decide, yes, while we're issuing the teacher license, we can issue these other licenses as well.
Thank you for that clarification. My other question is one that I had kind of thought of this morning and messaged the senator about it. And so I'm not sure, I believe this has more to do with possibly Mr. Rice, but I'm not sure. It has to do with the language that's in Article 1, Section 3 in particular. It has to do with the disciplinary information. So I need to kind of explain the scenario a little bit. As many of us know in education and who care about education, we continually see some states enact laws where people are not allowed to teach certain subjects or discuss certain items or even bring forward specific books. So let us say that there is an individual who is licensed in our state, goes to one of those states because they have in fact entered into this agreement. Maybe they're staying with their mother or grandmother who's sick for a year or 2 years. They get in trouble for teaching a banned book. I'm with the band, so let's just go with To Kill a Mockingbird. And they come back to our state. Would those disciplinary actions be something that could impact their license in our state, or is that something more that at this time the pact has not necessarily discussed? In other words, are we putting somebody in jeopardy? If there's a law in a different state, are we putting their license in jeopardy in our state?
Mr. Adams?
I will start to address this, and then Adam, you may want to step in and say a couple of things on it as well. Around the idea of the disciplinary action looking concerning what happens with the teachers where
I am so sorry. Would you guys say your name for the record? We just have a lot.
I apologize. Yes,
Thank you.
It's Jimmy Adams for the record, and it's with NASTEC. Where that is built in is that NASTEC has had the Educator Identification Clearinghouse, which has been in place since 1985. And anyone who has ever had adverse action taken against their license in any state, it's recorded into that clearinghouse. The compact allows for basically what happens right now is to check that clearinghouse to see if there's adverse action taken in another state before you issue that license. It is up to the state that is issuing the license whether they determine that they want to issue a license based on any adverse actions that may have occurred in the past. That does not prohibit any state from being able to say we will not issue a license, but they are at least issuing the license given full understanding and background on that person with licenses which they may have held in another state. So if a person is in Nevada and they go to another state and they have adverse action and they come back to Nevada, it's up to you whether you want to issue that license determined based on whatever that adverse action may have been.
Thank you so much for that clarification, because I was also just seeing Inherit the Win, which is about teaching Darwinism. So thank you so much for that clarification that is up to the state's decision based upon those items. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And next we will go to Assemblyman De Silva.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing forth this legislation and co-presenters for an excellent presentation. I have a tripartite question, really. One, really quickly. Yeah, so the compact, it's not in existence currently, correct? We're waiting for a critical mass of states to join or to actually to join the compact. Secondly, so the licenses, this isn't an immediate reciprocity of licenses, not correct? From what I'm reading, you have to apply to the state that you may be moving into. So it's not a sort of reciprocity-based licensing system where if you have a license in one state, you're now going to be licensed in all of them. And then thirdly, the funds. It seems to be that the funds are based upon, again, correct me if I'm wrong, membership dues. So when a state joins the compact, the compact will then be funded by the dues that the state will then pay towards the membership of the association. And those are just my questions there. Thank you.
Marilyn Dondero Luke for the record. I think I'm going to turn this over to Adam. He may be able to answer that. I sort of want to say yes, yes, and yes, but I'll let him jump in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for the question. Adam Deersing for the record. Essentially, yes, yes, and yes. So the legislation requires 10 states to enact the compact before it becomes effective. That being said, there will likely be some lead time after the 10th state enacts for the commission to be stood up and the initial rulemaking processes to take place. So we're likely looking at several months after the 10th state passes, though not years of lead time after that point. To your second question, yes, there are other licensure compact models that utilize a system of multi-state practice. This was built specifically to meet the needs of teachers, which are largely their mobility patterns are based on at least 1 year of employment in another state. And so this requires states to grant their own licenses. And that is both to protect teachers and to protect individual state sovereignty on what licenses they're granting teachers coming from out of state through the compact. And then lastly, on funding the commission, that will be a determination of the member states themselves. So every state that joins the compact will have a voting member on the commission. That person will be the delegate of or the head of the licensing office in any given state. And any funding that is required will be a collaboration of the member states to determine what funds are needed and where those funds will come from. So no membership dues will be expected without the input of every member state. And it's also possible to seek outside funding. So not all of that funding needs to come from state appropriations or licensing agency budgets at any point, and any decisions made around the funding will come from the states themselves. I hope that answered your question, and thank you.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Assemblyman LaWeir Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this important bill. I think, again, as a teacher, I recognize the need for this and to address our shortages. So I have two questions. My first one is, do we know how long it takes someone to get licensed now when they move from out of state to Nevada?
Marilyn Dondero, Loop for the record. I can't give you an exact timeline. I can tell you that I just renewed my teaching license. I renewed it, but it was fairly seamless, and I think within a month I had everything. I'd done my fingerprints. I had, gone to the State Department and paid my fee, and they checked my background, and I think a month later I received an email that said it was done. I will tell you, I've helped many teachers along the way who have contacted me and said, I don't have my license, I panic, or a principal, and almost always, 100% of the time, something hasn't happened. They have forgotten to send their college transcripts. The college has forgotten to send their transcripts. In other words, it's not really a department issue as much as those outside things that we need to do. They had trouble getting a fingerprint. They didn't know they could go other places for fingerprints. They didn't know, there was just lots of reasons. They missed the email that said they had to renew their license. I don't know, right? I mean, I can tell you there's been a myriad of reasons so I can't tell you how long because I'm not in that process, but I would say, if I was to guess, 4 to 6 weeks, it would be a standard practice if everything was there.
Thank you for that. I think just from my experience, we've had teachers start the school year without their license, even though they applied back in May and they're still waiting for it and they have to be hired as a sub until they can get it all sorted out. And that's even when they graduated from UNR. So I do appreciate that it takes some time. My second question is on page 5. I'm looking at subsections 3 and 4, and I just wanted to make sure I fully understand these two sections. So 3 is for if someone moves from a member state to our state, then our state has the discretion to grant them a license or not. I'm noticing like on line 10, it says may include a determination that the applicant is not eligible for any of the eligible licenses of the receiving state. And that's specifically for member states. But just want to confirm that in section 4, a military member or a military spouse does not need to be moving from a member state. They could be moving from any state. And then on line 19, it says the receiving state shall grant. So I just want to confirm for military spouses and military members, it will be granted and it doesn't matter where they are coming from. Is that correct?
Dr. Rice, I think I can answer that, but do you want to weigh in?
Probably I should let Mr. Adams field that one.
While we're waiting for Mr. Adams, I would tell you that in section 3, my guess would be, not having a conversation specifically on this, is that we need to remember that someone could come to our state who does not qualify for a license for some reason. So, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, and this is Jimmy Adams for the record, and you're exactly right that someone may come in with what would appear to be a qualification under the compact, but Nevada is not comfortable for whatever reason issuing that license. And as I mentioned earlier, that could be around disciplinary issues that may have taken place. Your concern or question about member of the military, they would have to be, in order to use the compact, even if that person, they would still have to be coming from a member compact state in order for the compact to be able to issue their license. However, keep in mind that Jeff Brisky's office there in Nevada, they will work with anyone who is applying to try to do their best to issue that person's a license if they're able to do so.
You good? Yes, I had a feeling.
Thank you. Sorry, I was processing for a second. So that, I think that makes sense. I just want to clarify then, for the military member or the military spouse, if there is a disciplinary issue or some other thing, is there discretion for the state to not grant it, or is it an automatic?
This is Jimmy Adams again for the record. And yes, it is the state's discretion whether or not they would issue that license.
All right, next, I think we'll end with Assemblywoman Torres. Anyone else? Okay, will be our last question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for the presentation. And I think the presentation answered a number of my questions, so it's very helpful. And thank you for being so thorough. And I'm really just trying to conceptualize this and make sure that I'm understanding the bill as well as possible. So would this create like almost like a standard? Like this is the standard. I'm just imagining, like, we have the ARL license. You have to have these requirements to have your ARL license, or there's also, like, the national boards, right? You have to have this, and obviously that's a very extensive process to get your national boards. Not every teacher is going to get a national board. Not every teacher wants to do that work to get the national boards, right? But is this going to create, like, almost like this is the minimum if you want to have, like, this type of mobility? Is that essentially what it's going to do, or am I understanding that incorrectly?
Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record, and I'll answer it. And then if somebody on Zoom wants to jump in, please do. What this creates is if I'm a military spouse and I'm in Alabama, and my husband or other significant other, whatever it may be, gets stationed at Nellis or Creech or wherever they get stationed, and I'm a teacher, this means this is going to help me streamline that process and get me in the classroom faster. So, you know, if I came here and I had to go through all of the processes, then that might take me longer, and this just streamlines that process for our military folks.
And this is Jimmy Adams for the record. And exactly right. For the military personnel, it is that could be a temporary provisional type license where they are working on a full professional license. But for the person who is not in the military, this actually says that you have to have what would refer to commonly as a full professional license in order to qualify under the compact. And the idea there is that if you've reached that level, then all of the states can say, and Nevada would enter the list that they have, these are our full professional licenses. And Kentucky will list theirs. Utah will list theirs. And so someone coming in from Kentucky to go to Nevada, they would be able to see, yes, I have the appropriate license in Kentucky, and then they would apply to Nevada, and Nevada would issue the equivalent or as close to equivalent that they have of that license.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That answers my question.
Thank you. With that, I'll have you sit back and I'll call for support. If there's anyone here in Carson City or in Las Vegas who want to fill those chairs for support of Senate Bill 442.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przenski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And we certainly want to thank the Senator for bringing this bill forward, and also the hard work that Dr. Rice has done, who's been in Nevada and done a lot for teachers and the licensure process here in the state. And we're in full support of this bill. And it fits very well with our INVEST document, which is to increase the teachers' pipeline. So we thank the Senator for bringing it forward, and we're in support. Thanks.
Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations. I know you'd love for me to ditto, and yes, indeed. And I'll just say that Clark County School District is in support of this legislation and legislation that reduces barriers and creates more streamlined pathways to ensuring that educators can join us here in Nevada. Thank you so much.
And is there anyone in Las Vegas, or is it just you still at the? That's right.
Just me.
Okay, thank you. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line who would like to testify in support?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide support testimony at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close support and move to opposition. Anyone in Carson City or in Las Vegas in opposition? BPS, anyone on the phone line in opposition?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide opposition testimony at this time.
Thank you. And finally, we'll go to neutral. Anyone in Carson or Las Vegas in neutral of Senate Bill 442? Not seeing anyone. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Great. With that, we will close testimony. Would you like to make any closing comments?
Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair, for hearing this bill, and thank you to Dr. Rice and all of those on Zoom for helping today, and Senator Woodhouse for spearheading this. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you very much. And now I will close the hearing of Senate Bill 442, which now moves us to our final agenda item, which is public comment. Is there anyone in Las Vegas or in Carson City who would like to make public comment? Not seeing anyone. BPS, is there anyone on the phone line?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Okay, well, our next meeting will be Thursday, May 11th at our normal time, 1:30. That concludes this meeting for today, and this meeting is adjourned.